The sun beat down on Sarah's small farm as she rushed to feed her chickens, goats, and sheep. She had nurtured these animals for years, taking pride in the fresh produce and dairy they provided. But today, the gathering storm clouds mirrored the turmoil brewing. The HOA had discovered her unsightly farm and was threatening legal action. Sarah knew she had to stand her ground, even if it meant going to war with her own neighborhood. Sarah wiped the sweat from her brow and hurried to the old barn, her boots crunching on the dry earth. The animals bleated and clucked, sensing her anxiety. She forced a smile as she filled their troughs, trying to keep her mind off the impending confrontation. Just then, the sound of an engine rumbled up the long driveway. Sarah's heart raced as she recognized the shiny SUV belonging to her neighbor, Margaret, the HOA president. Squaring her shoulders, Sarah strode out to meet her. "Good morning, Margaret," Sarah called, attempting civility. "What brings you out here today?" Margaret's lips pursed into a thin line as she surveyed the sprawling farm. "Sarah, I'm afraid we have a problem. The HOA has received numerous complaints about the, unsightly conditions of your property. The chickens, the goats, it's simply unacceptable in our neighborhood." Sarah felt her temper flare. Unacceptable. This is agricultural land, protected by state law. I have every right to farm here. That may be true, Margaret sniffed, but your farm animals are an eyesore. They bring down property values and don't belong in a residential area. This farm has been in my family for generations, Sarah retorted, her voice rising. I won't be bullied into getting rid of my animals just to appease a bunch of stuck-up HOA members. Margaret's eyes narrowed. Then I'm afraid we'll have to take legal action. You have 1 week to remove those farm animals, or we'll file a complaint with the city. With that, she turned on her heel and strode back to her car, leaving Sarah seething in the dust. She watched helplessly as the SUV vanished down the road, her mind racing. There was no way she'd let the HOA take away her beloved animals without a fight. Hurrying to the house, Sarah burst through the front door, startling her husband Tom, who was sipping coffee at the kitchen table. "The HOA is threatening to sue us over the farm animals," she cried, relaying the confrontation. Tom's brow furrowed. "What? That's ridiculous. This land is zoned for agriculture. They can't just force us to get rid of the animals." "That's what I told Margaret, but she doesn't care. She said we have 1 week to remove them, or they'll file a complaint." Sarah's hands trembled with fury. "I won't let them do this, Tom. This farm is our livelihood, and those animals mean everything to me." Tom reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "Don't worry, we'll fight this. I'll call our lawyer first thing. We're not going down without a battle." Sarah nodded, determination stealing her features. She knew this was far from over. The HOA had no idea who they were messing with. The following morning, Sarah and Tom sat across from their lawyer, Michael, in his neatly appointed office. Tom had wasted no time in arranging the emergency meeting, and Michael listened intently as they recounted the HOA's ultimatum. "This is clearly a case of overreach on the HOA's part," Michael said, brow furrowed in thought. "As you mentioned, the land is zoned for agricultural use, and you have every right to maintain a working farm here." "That's what I told Margaret, but she doesn't seem to care," Sarah interjected, frustration evident in her voice. "She says the animals are an eyesore, and that they're bringing down property values." Michael shook his head. "That argument simply doesn't hold water. Your farm predates the HOA, and the members knew what they were getting into when they moved here. They can't just dictate what you do with your own property." Tom leaned forward. "So what can we do?" "I get the feeling Margaret and the HOA aren't going to back down without a fight." "Well, we have a few options." Michael steepled his fingers. "First, I'll send a strongly worded letter to the HOA, reminding them of your legal rights and warning them against any further harassment or legal action. If they persist, we can take them to court and seek an injunction to prevent them from interfering with your farm operations." Sarah felt a surge of hope. "And they can't force us to get rid of the animals." "Absolutely not," Michael assured her. "As long as you're operating within the zoning laws, the HOA has no legal grounds to demand you remove your livestock. We'll make sure they understand that in no uncertain terms." Tom nodded, some of the tension draining from his shoulders. "That's a relief. I know how much those animals mean to Sarah, and I wasn't about to let the HOA bully us off our own land." "Well, consider it handled," Michael said, offering a reassuring smile. "I'll draft that letter today and send it over to the HOA president. Hopefully, that will nip this in the bud before it escalates any further." As they rose to leave, Sarah felt a weight lifting from her chest. With Michael in their corner, she knew they had a fighting chance against the HOA's baseless demands. She wouldn't back down without a fight. This farm was her legacy, and she'd be damned if she let anyone take it away. The following day, Sarah and Tom waited anxiously by the mailbox, watching for the familiar white envelope that would contain Michael's letter to the HOA. When it finally arrived, they tore it open and scanned the contents, their expressions hardening with each passing line. "This is even stronger than I expected," Tom murmured, impressed. Michael really laid it on thick. Sarah nodded, a tiny smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "Good. I want them to know we mean business. There's no way they're going to bully us off our own land." Just then, the rumble of an engine had them both whirling around. Sarah's smile vanished as she recognized Margaret's SUV careening up the driveway, the tires kicking up a cloud of dust. "Speak of the devil," Tom muttered, bracing himself as the vehicle came to a screeching halt. Margaret emerged, her face flushed with anger. "I just got your lawyer's little letter," she spat, marching up to them. "Who does he think he is, threatening the HOA?" Sarah met her gaze unflinchingly. "He's our lawyer, defending our rights as landowners. This farm has been in my family for generations, and we have every legal right to operate it as we see fit." "That may be true," Margaret sneered, "but your farm is an eyesore, and it's bringing down property values for the entire neighborhood. Do you have any idea how many complaints we've received?" "I don't care about your complaints," Sarah shot back, her temper flaring. "This is our livelihood, and those animals are family to us. You have no right to demand we get rid of them." Margaret's eyes narrowed to slits. "We'll see about that. I can assure you this isn't over." With that, she whirled around and stomped back to her car, peeling out of the driveway in a spray of gravel. Sarah watched her go, heart pounding. She's not going to give up, is she? Tom wrapped a comforting arm around her shoulders. "No, but neither are we. Michael's letter was a good first step, but if she keeps pushing, we'll be ready." Sarah nodded, resolve hardening in her chest. She would do whatever it took to protect her farm and her animals, even if it meant going to war with the entire HOA. Over the next few days, Sarah and Tom waited anxiously for the HOA's response to Michael's strongly worded letter. But the silence was deafening, leaving them on edge and wondering what their next move might be. One morning, as Sarah was tending to the chickens, she heard the unmistakable rumble of an engine approaching. Glancing up, her heart sank as she recognized the familiar black SUV pulling into the driveway. Steeling herself, she strode out to meet Margaret, who was already marching towards her. "I don't appreciate your lawyer's threats," Margaret spat, her eyes narrowed to slits. "This is our neighborhood, and we have a right to maintain its appearance." Sarah felt her temper flare. "Your appearance doesn't trump our legal rights as landowners. We've operated this farm for generations, and we're not going to let you bully us into getting rid of our animals." "We'll see about that," Margaret retorted, an ominous edge to her voice. "I've already filed a formal complaint with the city. They'll be out to inspect your property and determine if you're in violation of zoning laws." Sarah's blood ran cold. Violation. This land is zoned for agricultural use, and we've done nothing wrong. That remains to be seen. Margaret sniffed. If the city finds any issues, you'll be forced to remove those unsightly farm animals, whether you like it or not. Whirling around, she stomped back to her car, leaving Sarah shaking with fury. How dare she try to undermine their legal rights? This was their home, their livelihood, and she'd be damned if she let the HOA take it away. Hurrying to the house, Sarah burst through the door, startling Tom, who was sipping coffee at the kitchen table. The HOA filed a complaint with the city, she blurted out, her voice laced with panic. They're going to inspect the property, and if they find any issues, they're going to force us to get rid of the animals. Tom's brow furrowed in concern. What? But we're completely within our rights to operate this farm. How can they do that? I don't know, but Margaret sounded pretty confident about it, Sarah said, wringing her hands. She's trying to find a way around the zoning laws, and she's not going to stop until she gets what she wants. Tom's expression hardened. Well, she's in for a rude awakening. We'll be ready when the city inspector comes, and we'll make sure they understand the full extent of our legal rights. Sarah nodded, a glimmer of determination sparking in her eyes. Dan right. There's no way I'm letting the HOA destroy everything we've built here. This farm is our life, and we're going to fight for it, no matter what. As Tom reached across the table to squeeze her hand, Sarah knew that their battle with the HOA was only just beginning. She was more determined than ever to protect her beloved farm and the animals she cherished, even if it meant going to war with the entire neighborhood. The following day, Sarah and Tom waited anxiously as the city inspector's truck pulled up the long driveway. A middle-aged man in a crisp uniform stepped out, clipboard in hand, and approached them warily. Good morning, he began, eyeing the sprawling farm with a guarded expression. I'm here to conduct an inspection at the request of the local HOA. Is this your property? Sarah straightened her shoulders, determination etched across her features. Yes, it is. My name is Sarah, and this is my husband, Tom. How can we assist you today? The inspector glanced down at his clipboard. Well, the HOA has filed a complaint regarding the, unsightly nature of your farm animals. They claim the livestock is in violation of local zoning regulations. Tom spoke up, his voice firm. That's simply not true. This land has been zoned for agricultural use for over a century. We have every legal right to maintain a working farm here. The inspector's brow furrowed. I see. Well, I'll need to conduct a thorough inspection to verify that. If there are any issues, I'll have to file a report with the city. Be our guest, Sarah replied coolly. We have nothing to hide. Our farm operations are fully compliant with all relevant laws and regulations. With a nod, the inspector set off, carefully examining the fences, the livestock pens, and the various outbuildings. Sarah and Tom watched with bated breath, waiting for any sign of disapproval or concern. After what felt like an eternity, the inspector returned, his expression unreadable. Well, I have to say, your farm seems to be in excellent shape. Everything appears to be in order, and I see no violations of the zoning code. Sarah felt a surge of relief, while Tom's face broke into a triumphant grin. That's what we thought. The HOA has no legal grounds to demand that we remove our animals. The inspector nodded. Exactly. I'll make sure to include that in my report to the city. Unless there are any new complaints filed, you shouldn't have any further issues with the HOA. Sarah couldn't help the smile that spread across her face. Thank you, Inspector. We really appreciate you taking the time to look into this. As the inspector climbed back into his truck and drove away, Sarah turned to Tom, eyes shining. We did it. We proved the HOA wrong, and now they can't touch our farm. Tom pulled her into a tight embrace. I knew we'd come out on top. Those animals mean the world to you, and I wasn't about to let anyone take them away. Sarah nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude and relief. The HOA's threats had been nothing but empty bluster, and she knew they wouldn't be giving up that easily. But for now, their farm was safe, and that was all that mattered. In the following weeks, Sarah and Tom waited with bated breath for any further action from the HOA. But to their relief, the neighborhood remained quiet, almost too quiet. One afternoon, as Sarah was tending to the goats, she heard the familiar rumble of an engine and looked up to see Margaret's SUV once again pulling into the driveway. Bracing herself, she strode out to meet the HOA president, who was already marching towards her. "What do you want, Margaret?" Sarah asked, her voice laced with suspicion. Margaret's lips curled into a thin smile. "Well, Sarah, I have to hand it to you. You and your husband seem to have the law on your side. The city inspector found no issues with your little farm." Sarah eyed her warily. "That's right. We're fully compliant with all zoning regulations, and we have every legal right to operate this farm. So what's your problem?" "My problem," Margaret said, her voice dripping with disdain, "is that you're making a mockery of our neighborhood. Those farm animals are an eyesore, and the constant noise and smell is driving everyone crazy." "That's not my concern," Sarah retorted, her temper flaring. "This farm has been here long before your precious HOA, and we're not going to let you bully us into getting rid of our animals." Margaret's eyes narrowed to slits. "Oh, I think you will. You see, while the city inspector may have found no technical violations, there are other ways we can address this little problem of yours." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about making your life here a living hell," Margaret hissed, a vindictive gleam in her eye. "We have ways of making things very, very difficult for you and your husband. Trust me, you'll soon wish you'd just given in and removed those animals." With that, she turned on her heel and stalked back to her car, leaving Sarah staring after her in stunned silence. The ominous threat hung in the air, and Sarah felt a growing sense of dread. Hurrying back to the house, she burst through the door, startling Tom, who was reviewing some financial documents at the kitchen table. "Tom, we have a problem," she said, her voice trembling. "Margaret just paid us another visit, and she's threatened to make our lives miserable if we don't get rid of the animals." Tom's brow furrowed in concern. "What? But the city inspector found no issues. We're fully within our rights." "I know, but Margaret doesn't seem to care," Sarah replied, her hands shaking. "She said they have ways of making things difficult for us, and that we'll soon wish we'd just given in." Tom's expression hardened. "Well, she's got another thing coming if she thinks we're going to back down. This farm is our livelihood, and those animals are part of our family. We're not going to let the HOA bully us into giving that up." Sarah nodded, determination shining in her eyes. "I know, but I can't help feeling like this is far from over." Margaret sounded serious, and I'm worried about what she might try to do next. Tom reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together. We've already proven the HOA wrong once, and we'll do it again if we have to. This is our home, and we're not going anywhere." As Sarah squeezed his hand in return, a glimmer of hope sparked within her. With Tom by her side, she knew they could withstand whatever the HOA threw their way. But she couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that this battle was far from over. In the weeks that followed, Sarah and Tom found themselves on high alert, bracing for any new attacks from the HOA. While the neighborhood remained outwardly quiet, an uneasy tension hung in the air, and they couldn't shake the feeling that Margaret and her cohorts were plotting something sinister. One day, as Sarah was tending to the chickens, she noticed a strange truck parked at the end of the driveway. Squinting against the glare of the sun, she could make out the logo of a local pest control company on the side of the vehicle. Panic rising in her chest, Sarah rushed to the house, bursting through the door. "Tom, I think the HOA has called in a pest control company to spray our farm." Tom's eyes widened in alarm. "What? Are you sure?" "I saw the truck at the end of the driveway," Sarah said, her voice trembling. They're probably trying to claim we have some kind of infestation just to make trouble for us. Tom's jaw tightened with determination. Well, they're not going to get away with it. I'll go out there and put a stop to it right now. As Tom strode outside, Sarah watched anxiously from the window, her heart pounding. She saw him approach the pest control workers, his gestures animated as he argued with them. After a tense exchange, the workers reluctantly climbed back into their truck and drove away, Tom following them to the end of the driveway. When Tom returned, his expression was grim. They claimed the HOA had called them in to inspect the farm for rodents and insects. I told them in no uncertain terms that they were trespassing on private property and that they had no right to be here without our consent. Sarah let out a shaky breath. Thank goodness you stopped them. I was so worried they'd start spraying chemicals all over the farm. Tom nodded, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. I know. But this is just the beginning, Sarah. The HOA is clearly not going to give up, and they're going to keep finding new ways to harass us. Sarah's eyes narrowed with determination. Then we'll just have to be one step ahead of them. We can't let them win, Tom. This farm is our life, and we're not going to let them take it away. Dan right, Tom replied, his voice firm. We've got the law on our side, and we're not going to back down. We'll fight them tooth and nail, no matter what they throw at us. As Sarah leaned into her husband's embrace, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The HOA may have been relentless, but so were she and Tom. They would do whatever it took to protect their beloved farm and their way of life, even if it meant going to war with the entire neighborhood. The tension in the neighborhood continued to escalate in the following weeks, as Sarah and Tom found themselves locked in an ongoing battle with the HOA. Despite their legal rights, Margaret and her associates seemed determined to make life as difficult as possible for the couple. First, there were the constant noise complaints, with neighbors calling the police over the bleating of the goats or the crowing of the roosters. Each time, Sarah and Tom were able to prove they were operating within the local ordinances, but the repeated harassment wore them down. Then came the letters, dozens of them from the HOA, demanding that they remove the eyesore of a farm and threatening legal action if they didn't comply. Sarah and Tom dutifully forwarded each one to their lawyer, who assured them that the HOA had no grounds to force them off their land. But the final straw came one morning when Sarah discovered that someone had sabotaged the livestock fencing, leaving several of the animals loose and wandering the property. Horrified, she frantically worked to round them up, even as she knew in her heart that this was no accident. Rushing to the house, she found Tom on the phone with the police, his face etched with fury. We just caught one of the HOA members red-handed, tampering with fences, he told her, his voice tight with barely contained rage. The cops are on their way to arrest him. Sarah felt a surge of triumph, even as she ached for the distress of her beloved animals. Good. I knew they wouldn't stop at anything to try and drive us out. When the police arrived, they quickly apprehended the HOA member, a middle-aged man named Frank, who lived a few streets over. He admitted to the sabotage, claiming the HOA had ordered him to do it. As the officers led Frank away in handcuffs, Sarah and Tom stood together, watching the drama unfold. They knew this was far from over, but in that moment, they felt a sense of vindication. We did it, Tom, Sarah murmured, leaning into his embrace. We stood our ground, and we won. Tom nodded, his arm tightening around her. And we're not going anywhere. This farm is our home, and we're not going to let the HOA take that away from us. No matter what they try, we'll be ready. Sarah smiled, her eyes sparkling with determination. Damn right. We're in this for the long haul, and we're not backing down. This is our legacy, and we're going to fight for it, no matter what. As the police car carrying Frank disappeared down the road, Sarah and Tom turned and headed back to the farm, their steps lighter than they had been in weeks. The battle may have been won, but they knew the war with the HOA was far from over. But they were ready, and they wouldn't stop until their beloved farm was truly and forever secure.